From Atlanta, Georgia, welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast for women on leadership and life skills with Rhea Story. Rhea shares powerful life and leadership principles, helping you maximize your potential and become the woman God created you to be.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on self-construction. I actually did I wrote a blog on this maybe a little over a year ago, but I wanted to do a podcast episode on it. Number one, because I think the concept for me has grown, or maybe I've grown since I wrote that article some time ago. And that's the beauty of always learning and always growing is it changes sometimes the way we think about something, and that gives us a little more information, a little more insight, and so just kind of a new perspective, right? um I was teaching a class that really initiated the concept for this blog and this podcast, and the class was on the concept of self love, which is kind of one of the themes of my book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, because I think until you believe that you have self-worth and you have self-love, you're not going to have self-discipline or self-development. Like if you don't care about yourself, you're not going to care about developing yourself or developing or disciplining yourself or taking care of yourself, right? You won't reach your potential because you won't have that self-love of I care about myself as a person. And one of the participants in the class commented that at times she had turned to self destructive behaviors because it helped her numb pain pain from the traumas that she had been through, from what she had experienced. And so she had in the past turned to self destructive behaviors. And here we are talking about self love. And obviously, if you have a full concept of self love, you're not going to self destruct or turn to self destructive behaviors. And when I say self destructive behaviors, these could be something, habits or behaviors that harm you mentally or physically. And of course, we've all done it, probably. Maybe we don't call it that, or maybe we don't recognize that, but we've probably all done things in the past that were destructive for one reason or another. Maybe we weren't able to be proactive. Maybe we lost our temper and got mad at somebody and yelled at them. And that's self destructive because it's harming the relationship. Or maybe, you turned to an unhealthy behavior as a coping skill. I know a lot of people who say they took up something like smoking because they were stressed and they wanted something to help them cope with that. um, or it could be a lot of different things. And sometimes we turn to self-destructive behaviors because of emotions we don't like, or sometimes it's a person we don't like, and maybe that person is ourself, and maybe it's just a lack of valuing our potential. But anyway, hopefully as we grow and mature, we realize the value of avoiding those behaviors, and as we develop ourselves, we're able to resolve the underlying issues and find healthier ways of working through pain or trauma or stress or whatever it is that triggered that self destructive behavior to begin with. But I wondered if instead of focusing, I mean, we obviously want to avoid those self destructive things, those things that don't move us forward. Anything that's not moving you forward or that could be toxic to you could be self destructive. But what if we could move from self destruction to intentional self construction? What would that look like? Self construction, I think that the dictionary definition is cognitive representation of one's own identity, which sounds like a whole bunch of fancy words, but basically it's saying you get to decide what your identity is. And deciding what your identity is, what your values are, is going to translate to deciding what your actions, habits, behaviors are. So I want to kind of dig down into this. I kind of use this self construct formula. Number one, claim your values. If you've been following my podcast for any length of time, you know I talk a lot about that. Deciding intentionally what is most valuable to you. And really, it's kind of hard because it challenges you to think through, well, what is really most important to me? I mean, a lot of times when you say, well, what's important to somebody? What do you value? They'll jot down 10 things. And if you say, well, just pick one, could they pick one? And, that's when it gets really hard. And, a lot of times companies or organizations have values or mission statements and values, and they'll put them on the wall and say, these are the values here at our company. But whether it's you as an individual or in an organization, if I couldn't see those values being lived out every day in your life or your company, then they're not really your values. And that's okay. My point being, I want you to intentionally choose them and then intentionally live them. But you got to own them. Because if you don't own them, they're not really yours to begin with. So claim your values, whatever that looks like for you. And then, second, choose your thoughts. And I've talked a lot about that. I've done a lot of podcasts on the power of intentionally choosing your thoughts. But it's important and it's powerful. Now, it doesn't mean that random thoughts or negative thoughts aren't going to pop into your mind at times, but you can choose to embrace them or you can choose to push them away when they do. And it takes practice. But the second you feel those thoughts or negative thoughts coming in, get rid of them. And my favorite way to do that is to plan something I've got to look forward to, an upcoming a vacation, a weekend getaway, something I'm looking forward to, an event, an experience. Um, to me, this is one of the best ways for me that, if I'm struggling to stay positive or think about positive things, I think about something I'm looking forward to, and that really helps me redirect my thoughts in a more positive way. It's hard to be depressed when you're looking forward to a great vacation you've been planning all month in a month. So give yourself something to look forward to, something on the calendar. It could be as small as going to get a pedicure, or it could be as big as planning a weekend getaway or a week long trip. But choose something that you've got to look forward to so that when you're struggling with negativity and your thoughts are overwhelming, instead of dwelling on those, you're just going to redirect your focus and your energy to something positive. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have problems or you're not going to have opportunities where those negative thoughts want to creep in, but you get to choose what you dwell on. And you just have to think about that, the thoughts that you're choosing for yourself, for your future, for your health, your relationships, your career, and thinking about where you are, where you want to go, and how to get there, right? Redirecting your thoughts to a positive direction instead of dwelling on the things that you don't have or what you're missing out on or what you're not getting. Focus on what you can control and you find you have more control. And then command your actions. We leverage the power of small changes. I talked about that on last week's podcast because when we lever the change when we leverage small changes, little changes, we can accomplish our goals even when we don't feel like taking action. Because here's the truth, you're not going to always feel like doing what you need to do. You're not always going to feel like reading a personal growth book or feel like exercising or writing in your journal or taking time to develop the people on your team at work. Or you're not always going to feel like eating a salad instead of a slice of key lime pie. There are days, let me tell you, that I don't feel like drinking beet juice and going to run when it's 25 degrees outside. But this is a commitment I make to myself to improve my health. So I command myself to take the action and I do it. Honestly, the hardest part is getting out of the car because about the time I drive from here to where I'm going to go run, the car is nice and warm and toasty, and seat warmers feels so good. And then it's like, oh, now I got to get out and it's cold, but that's just reality, right? Running is an outside sport, and so outside conditions, but there are days when you don't always feel like it, but you do it anyway. Giving yourself a command means you do it, right? Whatever it is you need to take action on moving forward for yourself, make a decision, a real decision. And once you've decided, it's not an option, it's just a reality that hasn't happened yet. And if you put those three things together, claiming your values, choosing your thoughts, command your actions, that equals construction of your best self. And it says easy. It sounds easy. It sounds simple as I'm talking about it. And it is. But the power of simple is the power of possible, right? It says easy, it does hard. It's not always easy to do, and I recognize that. We all struggle at times with the things that we know would move us forward, but man, sitting on the couch and watching some TV sounds better instead, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, it comes down to how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to be successful? And just go do it. Just don't stop. Don't create an excuse. Don't create a mindset of I can't do it or I don't want to do it because it's hard. Create that mindset of I'm going to do it because I want it and I'm willing to sacrifice in order to get it. And there again, that comes down to what do you value? You've got to value it at a high level because everything you want in life is going to cost you something. If you want a college degree, that's going to cost you some fun time studying because you're going to have to spend some time studying. It's going to cost you time away from your family when you're actually in class. It's going to cost you money, or somebody's going to have to pay for that. It could cost you time or energy or money. But maybe it's not a degree you want. Maybe you want to study and get a certification for your career, right? Whether that's a license or a certification or a new skill, you're going to have to spend some time studying to pass that exam. That's where the sacrifice comes in and realizing this is going to cost me something. Mike and I just finished a workshop with a group of team members from one of our clients, and they're really investing in their members at a high level. And so we did a 6 week kind of deep dive, several sessions over the course of 6 weeks on Mac's book, The 10 Values of High Impact Leaders, which I honestly think is one of his. Of course, I'm biased because I've married him, but I think it's one of his most thought provoking books in terms of high impact leadership characteristics. A really good chapter in there on the delegation, and that was powerful for the attendees of the workshop. But anyway, all that to say, one of the points I made to those attendees, particularly in the last week or so, is they've invested in themselves and they've sacrificed, because it is a huge sacrifice to take 2 hours out of your day once a week for 6 weeks to invest in yourself and your growth. And that's the sacrifice part. And the thing about sacrifice is we always feel the loss first. When it comes to sacrifice, we always have to give up before we can go up. And that's why we don't want to do it. It would be so much easier if we could reap the benefits and the rewards before we had to sacrifice, right? Because then we'd be like, oh, here I am. I'm enjoying my reward. I'm enjoying my benefit. Now I don't mind sacrificing a little bit. No, you have to be committed and dedicated to sacrifice first and put the work in. You have to do the work before you can get paid. And whatever it is that we want, when it comes to self constructing our identity and creating the life that we want, the job that we want, the home life that we want, the relationships we want, whatever that is, when it comes to self construction, it's going to cost something, and that's okay. But there again, it's important to realize what's most valuable to you, what you're willing to sacrifice, and what is not negotiable. There was a time in my past when I was willing to sacrifice some of my health in order to achieve things, and I've probably shared that example before. There was one particular year where I was finishing up a degree and working a full-time job and a part-time job and training to run a marathon, and we were doing some mountain bike racing, and of course on top of that there's laundry and cooking and trying to fill that role at home. And all of these things came down, and I was like, something's got to give. And so I figured out, I'm like, I'm going to sleep 6 hours a night, 4 nights a week. And that's going to give me a whole extra 8 hours in my week, which sounds absurd now. But it helped me, at some point I was willing to value sleep a little less so that I could accomplish a little more of the things that I was juggling. Now, I don't recommend that. It was a short-term solution and it got me through, but I was, that was year was one of the most miserable in terms of my health. Like I got the flu twice, I got like a sinus infection, I got some tendonitis. I was struggling because I wasn't taking care of my health the way I should. And today, I would tell you there's no way I would value juggling two jobs and going to school for a degree enough to sacrifice health and sleep, right? Because I value that at a different level. I value each of those things at a different level today than I did then. And that's okay. Your values may naturally shift a little bit over time. And I think if you are growing and maturing, that's natural. You will come to value different things over time with growth, with time, with maturity, with a different stage of life. And that's okay. But it's recognizing what is most valuable, what's not negotiable, what you're not going to sacrifice, and what you are willing to give up. But this is all based on your self construction formula, right? It's going to look different than mine. It's going to look different than somebody else. But you have to figure out, who is the person I want to be? And then you have to become the person you want to be by doing the things that you do in order to get there. If you want to be someone who runs marathons, and you got to start the habits of someone who runs marathons before you actually run the marathon, because that's going to help you in the training. If you want to be more effective and influential in your career, you're going to have to adopt the mindset and the skill set of that person who can build great relationships and build their influence and build trust with their people at work. They're going to have to deliver results and keep commitments and all of these things that help you become the person who can be that high level leader, that high level influencer. So, thinking about on the front end what self construction looks like for you, and then adopting the habits and behaviors that will help you construct that person. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.